Tips for Indie Authors at Book Fairs with Christine Calabrese and Barbara Ann Mojica. Hi, everybody. This is Christine Calabrese and
Barbara Mojica.
We have some ideas for indie authors during book festivals and book fairs. And I thought I would interview Barbara and see what kinds of ideas she has. So we're going to start right off with the first question for Barbara that I have is, how should you approach a book fair?
Okay, well, there are lots of ways to approach them. First, you have to find out where they are. That's the biggest problem. And there are a lot of different ways you can do that. First of all, you can ask your author friends because they're a wealth of information. And you can also research on the internet. I recommend that when you first start out, you stay local because you don't want to spend a lot of money traveling if you don't know you're going to be able to sell anything and you're not familiar with the territory. So I recommend that you stay within a day's travel and that you also check out local libraries, check out professional organizations if your book lends itself to that. Museums are also good if your genre lends itself to that. You can go to craft fairs. If you live in a rural area, you can try farmers markets. And then, of course, there's also holiday venues, which are great. Everybody buys books around the holidays. So no matter what kind of book you pen, it probably would make a good gift. So that's always a great time of year. There are some times of years that are better than others. During the summer, things generally slow down, although there are some big festivals like the Brooklyn Book Festival and the Queens Book Festival. But those tend to be more of a fair event, and there's a lot of different things going on. For the big festivals, it's hard for indie authors to get in. In fact, it's harder for indie authors to get into almost any kind of festival because they're looking for the big names. So even if you contact a book festival, you have to kind of have a stiff upper lip because many times they're just going to say no. If you're not with a major publishing house, there are book festivals that won't even consider an indie author. But I usually keep trying. And I try at least 3 times before I knock them off my list.
Well, that's a good tip. That's a good tip for people to keep trying, to try at least 3 times before. And what you said about the craft fair, I think is really important for people, that around the holidays is a good time to try and sell your book because it's unique.
Right. And also around the holidays, a lot of organizations run fairs that are benefits to raise money for charities. So you can take advantage of that. And you can also, at the same time, donate to a charity. So I think that's an especially good benefit.
Yeah, that gives a good feeling for the books that you're publishing. What kinds of hints do you have for people to research the internet? What should they be looking for? Are there special terms that they can look for?
Well, you can search a lot of different ways. You can do it the hard way and just type in book festivals, and then you'll get 9 million pages of information that you have to sort through. You can do it by geographic area. So if you want to start in your local area, that's a good thing to do. Just type in your area. You can type in your state. You can do it by time of year. So if you want to look for book festivals in the fall or in the spring, you can do that. If you can search by genre. So because I write children's books, of course, I'm looking zero in mostly on children's book festivals. So I would type in children's book festivals. Then I would type in I would probably start with my state because I live in New York State. I would type in New York, and I would get the book festivals that are only in New York. You can also check out bloggers because a lot of bloggers will post events that they're attending or events that uh, that have been posted in their area. So you can check out bloggers, and a lot of them will have lists of book festivals. And as I said before, you can check out with your author friends book festivals that they have gone to, and they'll tell you, the pros and cons and things that have worked out maybe and things that haven't worked out. But even when you do a repeat of a book festival, you can't always count on things being the same because it changes. It depends on so many things. A book festival can be a huge success because the weather was great or because the weather wasn't great and people had to stay inside, so they decided to go to a book festival. It can be a big flop if there were too many events in the community scheduled for the same day. It can be a disaster when there are 3 other things scheduled locally on that same day. You should always, shoot for any opportunity that comes along. For instance, I out of the blue, I was contacted by a museum, and they were having a children's book day event with local schools. So they asked a few authors to come and do a presentation of their books in connection with that. So that was something that I normally wouldn't have thought about doing, but they contacted me. And so once you make contact with someone, they will tend to approach you many times again. If it works out well, they'll contact you again, and that's a good way of building up a rapport. It's different.
Yeah. Do they get assigned the tables, or is it first come first serve?
No,
or
it's usually
in general?
you get assigned a table.
Oh, okay.
You get assigned a table, and the larger it is, the more important that is. But even if like one book festival that I do every year involves 75 authors. So there were 75 authors in one gymnasium, and a lot of them are very well-known authors. So you can still make a really good presentation because people that go to this event are real book lovers and they love children's books. It's a whole day of children's books, entertainment. The kids are great. The kids love it. And the people who go to it tend to be repeat visitors, although not always, but they tend to be. But you have to kind of make a splash. So even you're an indie author, you might not have a big publisher, but you can still make your table very attractive. And like some people, some authors go really over the top. They get all dressed up in their clown costumes, or they hang balloons, or, they put candy on the table to entice, especially kids, of course, when they see candy on the table to come over. But if you have to have something that ties in with your logo and something that could be seen across the room. So if you're doing let's say you're doing a festival in a gymnasium, you want something that's going to attract somebody to come over. So I have a 6-foot retractable banner of my character, Little Miss History, with my logo on it. And when I do a book festival, I bring that with me. And you can't help but notice a 6-foot banner.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
that kind of gets people to come to your table. And once they come to your table, you have to hold their interest. So there's a lot of controversy. Some authors say when you do any kind of signing event, you should sit down the whole time, and other authors say no, you should stand up. And I generally like to stand up most of the time, but you have to look at the body language of the people that are passing by. Like some people are intimidated if you're standing up and you look like you're going to pounce on them or something.
Right.
And other people will not notice if you're sitting down and think, well,
Yeah.
So you have to kind of balance it. So if you have something that a banner a large poster, something that's going to attract their attention. Once you see people coming by your table, then you have to figure out a way to get them to stop. So you can get them to stop usually by initiating a non-threatening kind of conversation, like ask them a question. So since a lot of my books were about travel, I'll ask them something like, one of my books is Mount Rushmore. So I'll ask them, have you ever been to Mount Rushmore? Or do you know where Mount Rushmore is? And that kind of starts the conversation. Then I always have some promotional literature on the table. So I'll give them a flyer or a postcard connected with the
Oh.
book. And they'll start looking at that. Then once you make eye contact with them, you can start that conversation. That's the way I kind of get people involved. You should always have your books displayed, and of course hopefully your books have really colorful and attractive covers that are going to attract people. Once they're stopping at the table and they're looking at the books, you want them to keep looking. So I always have all the books displayed, even if sometimes book festivals want you to feature a book, but I always bring all of the titles. And then I clip the covers of the ones that I use for display, so that I always know which ones people have been picking up. And I never want to give someone one of the display books, so I always have plenty of fresh copies of books.
Right.
Most of the time at a book festival, they'll give you a large table. They'll cover it with some kind of tablecloth or covering, and they'll give you a chair or two to sit down. And then everything else is up to you. But people are looking, I find, to connect with the author more often than not. They're not just looking for the book. If they're not interested in your genre, then they're not going to stop. So you shouldn't be like upset by that. So you can't be put off by that, but you have to try to really engage them. And what I've found very often at book festivals is I make a lot of new friends, whether they're authors. You connect with a lot of authors and you exchange information. You find out a lot of things, and and you give and get, And the same thing with people. A lot of times at book festivals or book signings, people will come up and they'll ask, well, I have a book and I'm looking to get started, and what would you recommend? So they're looking for you to share information too. So it's a real give and take, and that's part of the fun of it.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot with people. That as soon as I say I wrote a book, they're like, I wrote one. I have one. I want to write one, and there's a lot to learn about, from the beginning of starting to write one to actually getting it in print. And you want to be able to guide people in the right direction. That's why I'm glad we made that other video that helps people. So
yeah, a lot of people don't have, like, they've written a book and like they don't have a clue what to do with it. Well,
right.
Who do I contact? How do I get started?
Right.
So that happens a lot. That whether it's a small book signing like at a local store, or whether it's a large book festival.
There's a lot. There's a controversy there, you said, between standing and sitting?
Yeah, well, some people say never sit down. Some people say never stand up. I mean, yeah, I think it depends. Like I said, it depends on the individual, and it depends on the event. I mean, I've done book signings outdoors. That's another thing. If you do a book signing outdoors, which a lot of the times during the summer, you'll have a town event or a craft fair, or you had to be prepared for almost anything outside. So you have to make sure, bring sunscreen, bring a hat if it's hot, bring some kind of plastic covering to cover the books, because you might have a thunder shower and you might have to scramble all of a sudden and have everything covered. It might be windy, so be prepared for it being windy. I always have almost everything with me. And bring a luggage cart or something with wheels to carry your books, because you don't want to have to run around, when it suddenly starts raining, trying to collect everything. And then sometimes you have to park pretty far from the event. And then you have to cart your books and, your posters and stands and whatever else you have to the table. So that's something I would
Have somebody
recommend.
with you when you do a show?
Yeah, I do, because my illustrator is my husband, so he usually comes with me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's great if you can bring your illustrator with you, because kids, but adults also, are very interested in how the book gets put together, and they want to know about how you put it together, how you do the pictures, and uh, illustrators have a big advantage, because when they go to a book festival, they can also draw for the kids, and the kids love that, and the adults
Yeah,
love that too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So a lot of times you'll see at book festivals, illustrators are sketching, and people love that, and then sometimes, like my husband often will do sketches and give them to people,
Yeah.
and they just
Oh, I
love
something
that.
earlier that I just wanted to. I wasn't really sure, so I'm sure other people would be questioning it. You said you clip the books. What do
Yeah,
you
I
mean
just
by
clip
that?
the back cover. My books are paperbacks, so they're
Oh,
not
okay.
hardcovers. So I clip the back cover so that I know that it's the display book. I
Oh,
use those for reading when I do reading events at schools, and you know, display and reading.
hmm.
And also, another thing that I might mention is, at these book festivals, there's a wide variety of setups as far as the money and the actual physical transactions. So if you go to a craft fair or a local community event, you might have to pay for a table.
Hmm.
Um, if you do a local bookstore, or you do a book festival, most often you apply for a spot at the festival, and then they give you the table free of charge. But there's usually a percentage with the money. So it's very common, if you do a larger book event, or even some of the stores, they'll do a 60-40 split. So the author gets 60% and they get 40. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they'll do a 70-30 split, and so the author gets 70% and they get
Oh.
30. At the larger events, most often they handle the money. So they'll have somebody with a cash register who will they will have an inventory of the books that are going to be at the festival, either sent by a publisher. If you're with a larger publisher house, that's what will happen. The publisher will physically ship them books. If you're an indie author, or you have a smaller publisher, and you do any kind of print on demand, or you don't keep a large inventory in your
Hmm.
house, then you're going to be bringing the books. That's why I say the luggage cart.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
always have to be prepared with a sufficient number of books, and you have to think about taxes. If your publisher isn't handling that aspect for you, like if your publishing company doesn't collect the taxes,
Hmm.
and you have to keep track of what you sold and then pay taxes later on. In that case, if you're handling the money and they're not inputting it from their cash register, I would suggest strongly that you even out the prices. So make your selling price an even $10, $8, $12, whatever. And also, you have to decide whether you're going to take credit cards or checks, if you're doing this yourself, or are you going to take only
Well, if you're
cash?
going to take credit cards or checks, and you have to have something like
Right, then you have to have, a smart card or
a
something,
smart card, yeah, something.
with your phone, something to do, which some indie authors do that. So if you're invited to do a reading at an event, and it's a special event, they may say, well, we want to have 15 books in the store, or we want to have 20 books in the store, and they'll sell the books later, or as well, after the event. They'll
And
continue to sell.
and and you feel it's a good idea to invest all the time and energy into doing this.
I do. I think for me, and for most indie authors, it's easier to do book festivals than it is to do schools because for indie authors, it's harder for them to get into the schools because the schools, like the organizers of the major book festivals and the book convention kind of sites. To any organization, that's another good way to find events. You can, like, I belong to the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators,
Mm-hmm.
so they have some resources. And, there's a site called everfast.com, eventfest, I'm sorry, and it lists the whole calendar for the year. It will take you hours literally to go through it.
Oh.
Really, besides the internet, looking in your local newspapers and just even looking in the stores at what's listed on the community information boards, you'll be surprised, what you can find even just
All right.
looking at that.
All right. Well, that's good. I think we've given plenty of information. Special thanks to Barbara Ann Mojica for taking the time to give us all these great tips. Look below for the links Barbara has provided. Kindly like and subscribe. Leave a comment too. Have a great day. Bye now.